Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. Pakistan's Special Representative on Afghanistan, Mohammad Sadiq Khan, had called on Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, briefing him in detail regarding his recent visit to Afghanistan and the engagements he had over there, what those engagements were focused on. We also know for a fact earlier Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has said regarding as to the relationship with the de facto authorities, the Afghan government there in Afghanistan. Let me quote him, that we have conveyed to the Afghan government that we desire good relations with them, but TTP should be stopped from killing our innocent people. This is a red line. TTP operating from there against Pakistan is unacceptable, unquote. Likewise, we had seen a very important presser by the DGISPR, Lieutenant General Ahmed Sharif Chaudhry, saying that all evidence related to terrorism could be traced back to the safe havens enjoyed by the terrorists in Afghanistan. There are a number of other very important points which were mentioned by the DGISPR in that particular presser, and he also shared the stats as to how many operations have been carried out by the security forces and the law enforcement agencies here in Pakistan to eliminate this particular menace, especially in the last 1 year, and the kind of sacrifices the valiant and the brave sons of soil have rendered for the security of this particular motherland. Also, there was an important presser by Pakistan's Foreign Office spokesperson, Mumtaz Zara Baloch. During there were certain questions and queries upon which she also answered and also reaffirmed Pakistan's commitment to a peaceful, stable and a united and prosperous Afghanistan. A number of other points also were highlighted by her in that particular press briefing. All these important matters are for discussion in today's show. For that, we are honored to be joined in the studio by Rear Admiral, retired Faisal Shah, Senior Analyst. Admiral Shah, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Also on Skype at the same time, we are honored to be joined by Mr. Zahir Shah, Sherazi, Afghan affairs expert. Mr. Sherazi, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. At the same time on Skype, we are honored to be joined by Mr. Asif Durrani, former ambassador and also former Pakistan Special Representative to Afghanistan. And Mr. Durrani, thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Admiral Shah, now by looking at this particular visit by Pakistan Special Representative to Afghanistan, Mr. Mohammad Sadiq Khan now is also briefed Prime Minister. There's also quite a detailed statement by the Prime Minister as to Pakistan's desire to have good relations with Afghanistan. Pakistan has always stated that Pakistan supports that very peace, stability and unity within Afghanistan. But at the same time, has also talked about the kind of threat that emanates from Afghan soil, and banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, Fitna al-Khawarij, had been perpetrating those terrorist attacks against Pakistan. But looking at this particular engagement first, how significant do you think at this particular point in time is of this special representative to Afghanistan?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much for having me on the program. I think Pakistan has always desired to have good relations with all its neighbors. And we have actually taken every measure to forge stronger relations and good peaceful relations in the region. Now, diplomacy and talks and negotiations with your neighbors, with your partners continues. But as we have already mentioned that TTP, attacks by TTP on our using Afghan soil and attacks into Pakistan is our red line. And we have clearly mentioned it many times before also, but they have not been able to arrest this situation. And it seems that the areas where these TTP activists and miscreants are there, and as per UN report, they are around 6,500 in number. So if these are not visible to current Afghan regime or Afghan interim government, I mean, it is something very strange. And there is a continuous activity from that side of the border, and Pakistan has provided tangible evidences to the Afghan interim government also, but they have failed to actually impress upon. Now, Pakistan has continued to provide support to Afghanistan. We have been the host to millions of Afghans. They are still here. We provide them transit route because Afghanistan is a landlocked country and we are obliged to provide them transit through Pakistan because we have maritime connectivity, and under UN clause we are obligated to do that. Now, Afghan interim government should understand that why Pakistan is forging or desiring peace with Afghanistan, because this region has great potential. It's not only Afghanistan and Pakistan. If Afghanistan becomes stable, it's a win-win situation for everybody. Pakistan, Afghanistan, Central Asian republics, even up to Russia. I mean, Afghanistan provides the best and most economical conduit for trade for everybody.
Yeah.
So Afghan leadership should understand they need to stand by TTP activities, or they need to have good relations with Pakistan.
Right. Mr. Durrani, now this particular engagement of the Special Representative of Pakistan to Afghanistan, Ambassador Sadiq, in Kabul, also interacting with the Foreign Minister of Afghanistan, Interior Minister, a number of other key officials over there. How significant do you think at this particular point in time this particular engagement is, and how significant it would prove to be in order to make a certain trajectory of this particular bilateral relationship between the two countries, when Pakistan on one side is continuously desiring a good neighborly relation with them?
Well, diplomatic contacts are always useful, and those are in fact meant for even mending fences if there are differences. So Ambassador Sadiq's visit was very important, and I'm sure it would pave the way for future interactions also, and there'll be visits from the Afghan side. However, unfortunately, the exchange of, you can say, fire between the two countries is not a good omen, and it needs code calculation from both sides. Reason is that it will be more harmful for the Afghan side if they want to raise the temperature, or they think that by sheltering TTP they can perhaps achieve some objectives. So then they are, I think, harshly mistaken, and they have to realize that situation for the time being, perhaps they can create some irritants, some problems for Pakistan. But Pakistan is a state, and TTP are just a non-state actor, and they cannot fight against the state. And if there is some ideological, you can say, misperception about the TTP, or if it is a misperception within the TTP, then I think that can be removed, and that needs to be addressed also. Yes.
Right, Mr. Durrani, I'll come back to you, take your deeper understanding as to what could be the possible sticking points, or what could be those possible demands, if there are, on the part of the de facto authorities in Afghanistan. It's been over 3 years since they've taken over Kabul, Afghanistan, after the international troops withdrawal, and they had that international obligation to ensure that the Afghan soil shouldn't be used against any other country. And Pakistan, having done so much, especially through those Afghan peace and reconciliation efforts, those humanitarian corridor provided that particular time, also on a number of other fronts. So what could be those demands, as to what could be those sticking points during the course of negotiations you found out as being the special representative from Pakistan to Afghanistan? I'll come back to you. Mr. Zahir Sherazi, now this particular engagement, at the same time, Pakistan has always been desirous of a peaceful, stable and prosperous and a united Afghanistan. There was hope when the Afghan Taliban were taking over at that particular time, but we have seen, in contrast to what their international obligation was, especially when it comes to Pakistan's red line, the banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, the Fitna al-Khawarij, they haven't been able to rein in against TTP. Reasons, as per your understanding?
Thank you, Jawad. As my honorable panelist earlier mentioned, I will just continue a little bit of that. I think Afghan Taliban, we miscalculated a bit that perhaps on the western border we would have the Afghan Taliban ruling Kabul. We would have a friendly government there, and we were expecting that all those militant elements are the terrorist elements who are fighting the Pakistani state. They should either be convinced to lay down their arms and accept the writ of Pakistani state. So that was also miscalculated. We tried to negotiate with them. We tried to bring them back, and even with the condition, many people are criticizing those, but actually it was like a decision at that time. Perhaps we are likely to rein in them again into our own Pakistani perspective and get them back to the mainstream, but that didn't happen. Now, there are two issues. Perhaps one, the Afghan government or the Kabul government is unwilling to take action against their half-brother, who they most of the time believe had been fighting along with them during what we can call jihad. So this is one thing. The second thing, perhaps the Kabul government don't have a writ over those areas where these anti-state actors are operating, whether they are ISK, they are the Fifth al-Khawarij or the band TTP, whether they are like some other militant groups which are fighting the Pakistani state and hitting the Pakistani interests. So this is the second theory which is most of the time put in. But actually, the people who actually the states are those elements who are using these proxies against Pakistan. They are very much active in one way or the other. The Indian involvement, we had been often discussing that they are very much interested in supporting the even the Taliban government, despite being like ideologically very far away from when it comes to understanding between the two states. Then the Afghan Taliban, perhaps they also have a lot of mistrust towards Pakistan, and this mistrust could not be removed. So for that, I think Ambassador Sadiq is one of the a key player, because he had been in Afghanistan when I was there. A lot of development activities, a lot of educational activities which were carried out during Ambassador Sadiq's time in Afghanistan. So he do have a lot of good contacts, so those contacts could be utilized. But the very important thing is that what are those areas where the Afghan government has failed to respond? Perhaps if you can say the ISK factor, which now most of the think tanks believe that it has been transported intentionally for a number of reasons along the path of one bordering belt, and we should be openly discussing it. We should be conveying it to the international coalition why it happened. Because they wanted to have a proxy to keep an eye on the Kabul government, if they're performing according to them or not. Then we also have the proxy there to keep an eye on the Chinese interest in the region, the Chinese development which they are going on in the form of BRI and the CPEC economic zone. So actually the international community and the coalition, they still are out of Afghanistan for the third time. They ditched Afghan and Pakistan, but they are still having their foot here in the form of their proxies. So the TTP is indirectly or directly supported and funded by those elements. That can be anyone who have interest in the region. So we have to convey to the international community as well. It's not only the Afghan government, because Doha agreement was actually materialized with the help of the international coalition led by the United States. And actually they installed the Afghan Taliban there, despite a number of objections by the Afghan stakeholders, because they were never involved in that peace process, and they are out of that government. So these are different, multiple factors, regional, local.
On that particular front, Mr. Sherazi, I'll come back to you, but you already pointed out two very important factors. When we talk about the ideological linkage between Band Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan and the Afghan Taliban, on one side, on the basis of ideology, the similarity of ideology, you call them the half-brothers of them. That's why they are unwilling to take action against them. On the other side, you also said that there are certain states which are trying to use proxies against Pakistan in order to destabilize Pakistan, including India. India remains to be the top of that, of course. So India has no similarity. There is no similarity of ideology. You already mentioned that between the Afghan Taliban and the Indians. So how can we understand, I'm being curious at this particular moment, on one side, there is a similarity of ideology. On the other, there isn't a similarity of ideology. Yet Afghan Taliban getting help from one and helping the other to make a leverage against Pakistan. What do actually the Afghan Taliban want?
Jawad, I think there are two issues. Perhaps their personal interests, their own interests, they are very important. I think ideology apart, but they have a lot of mistrust towards Pakistan. This is very important. Now we can see why Indians funded the Chabahar fort and provided more than $500 million to the development of that region. So this was also, their own economic gains. I think Indians had been doing businesses directly or indirectly through Pakistan, and perhaps Afghanistan is a market for them for one reason to keep an eye on the western border of Pakistan, being proxies, helping them out. Even you have seen they are offering on arrival visas to the Afghan students, to the medical arrivals, the patients. So these are the measures which the Indian government is using to have their influential foot inside Afghanistan. So on the other hand, when you see the Afghan Taliban or the Afghan government who had been fighting the infidels in the form of the US-led coalition, they are the third largest country which is getting $1.93 billion a year after Ukraine and Israel from the United States. So I think the ideology is again shattered there. So now that Islamic ideology, perhaps we are now out of it. It's the interest which they are towing now. And even the Chinese government, which is directly now negotiating with them, they are asking them to hand over those TIP militants, which are based more than 200 to 400 people who are in the no-go areas of Afghanistan, in return for different economic benefits, in return for including them in the CPEC and the BRI project. So I think the Afghan Taliban are playing on both sides. Perhaps you have seen the border clashes, the propaganda against Pakistan. You have seen their websites. Perhaps really they are propagating their social media accounts. All the time they have been criticizing Pakistan and the Pakistani security forces, and actually accusing Pakistan for carrying out anti-Afghan activities inside their territory. On the other hand, they never accepted the TTP presence there. We have given them sufficient proof to establish that. The recent strikes by Pakistan, perhaps they are very much valid. We have targeted their media operational base, their nerve centers there. But despite that, they are putting it like perhaps those civilians are killed in those strikes. So these are different tactics which the Afghan government is using. Perhaps we have to, use both channels. Even if somebody is trying to target our security forces, our civilians, Pakistan equally have the right to respond in any way. The second thing, the diplomatic channels are very...
Respond in the similar way or in the same coin. Ambassador Durrani, now there are a number of things Pakistan has done for the Afghan people. Hosting refugees for a number of decades now. Also that very critical role when the Afghan peace and reconciliation efforts were underway that led to the striking of the Doha Peace Accord. Then humanitarian corridor at that particular time. We've also seen Pakistan advocating vehemently that very case of the Afghan people, the dire humanitarian and the economic crisis they were faced with after international troops withdrawal on all the international fora with such a force. After Pakistan has done so much, are there any reasons? It makes me curious to understand or try to find out, are there any reasons for the Afghan Taliban to have a mistrust when it comes to Pakistan?
I think more than mistrust, it is the capability to go on. That's the problem. It was quite easy for them when they were fighting the Americans and the NATO troops. But now that they are in the government, they are responsible for everything. So it is their capability, because if you look at their foreign office, only 28 professionals are left. The rest in the foreign office. The rest have fled the country. Same is true with their other ministries. Professionals are no more in the country. So that is one aspect. Second aspect is which we are focusing is the TTP. TTP, yes, they are there ideological cousins, fine. But at the same time, something which they right now they have to make a different. There's a need to have a differentiation of TTP. It's not a monolith. It comprises over 2 dozen different groups with clans and sub-clan loyalties. So they are mostly uh, thugs who are actually, they have formed this TTP. And they are also a liability for the Afghan Taliban. Now, under the Pashtunwali Code, they are bound that they cannot force them to leave, or they cannot, you know, be harsh on them. But at the same time, I think they have to understand that tribalism would not work as far as governance is concerned. Either they have to be ideological, then they have to use the Quran as their guiding principle, or they, when it comes to their own interest, then they use the rawaj or tradition. And this is where the confusion lies with the Afghan Taliban. And they are unable to decide. And this is also the capacity problem with them. And when we talk about ISKP, which is well entrenched in Afghanistan and have been launching attacks not only inside Afghanistan, but they have been involved in Pakistan, in Iran, in Russia, in Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan. And if they are in a denial mode, this is the dilemma we are facing, that Afghan Taliban are in a denial mode, that there is a problem, and the problem lies inside Afghanistan. And TTP are one of the beneficiary of that uncertainty in Afghanistan, that they are using it, and they can also blackmail the Afghan Taliban that they can switch sides to join the ISKP. And there are some cases in which these TTP people have joined the ISKP. These are the serious issues which they have to address. But with regard to TTP, I'm of the firm believer that we have to smoke out these TTP guys from within our own borders. If we do that, and if we succeed in that, then uh, those who are staying in Afghanistan will be squeezed out. And there'll be no more oxygen left for them. So I think we have to change our tactics, our strategy to address this issue. But at the same time, Afghanistan also knows full well that without Pakistan, they can't do much. India has tried to some extent. They are paying the TTP through their Afghan proxies of the yesteryears when Ashraf Ghani or Karzai were in power. TTP was founded in 2007 onwards, so it was Karzai and Ashraf Ghani's time that India was paying TTP through Afghan proxies. Perhaps even now the TTP people may not know from where this money is coming, but this is the stroke the Indians are playing. But at the same time, it is not going to give them any strategic advantage as far as India is concerned, because the geographical advantage which Pakistan enjoys, India doesn't enjoy. And then India, Mr. Sherazi talked about Chabahar. Chabahar, there's hardly a business through Chabahar as far as India's trade with Afghanistan or Central Asia is concerned, because they know the transportation cost is much, much higher by doing business via Chabahar. And if there is a business between, say, Wagah to Kabul, it is only a matter of 48 hours. But from Indian port of Kandla in Gujarat to Chabahar to Zaranj, Dilaram, and Kabul, it takes 21 days. So perishables are not possible to be, traded there. And durables, India cannot compete in Kabul or Central Asian markets because of China. India cannot compete China in its own market. What to talk of India competing in Central Asian markets? So it is Indians. They did try. They have opened a second front for Pakistan because they want to keep us busy. Because on the direct front, they cannot dare to challenge Pakistan. Because if they do that, they will be paid in the same coin. So these are the things. Here, I think it's doable. We can do that. But for that, patience and perseverance would be needed. Yes.
Right, your point is well taken. One other point, I'll come back to you, Mr. Durrani, for your take regarding that, as to the role of the international community. And when that Doha Peace Accord was struck, it was primarily the U.S. and the Afghan Taliban. Of course, during that particular course, we saw Pakistan's role in the peace and reconciliation efforts. As to what could be expected primarily from the U.S. on that particular front, Admiral Shah. Now, are there any reasons for Afghanistan to have mistrust towards Pakistan? Despite that list that I already mentioned, number of things Pakistan has been doing for Afghan people, are there any? And what about this particular Indian factor? What's your understanding regarding that?
I think it's totally naive on part of Afghan interim government and generally Afghan officials to have mistrust against Pakistan, because Pakistan has done a lot for them and Pakistan can do a lot for them. I just explained that we have, I mean, if they want to understand that prosperity can be a way forward through making their economy better by having good relations with their neighbors, having trade relations with their neighbors, I think they don't need to go far beyond to India to have trade. They have so many neighbors around them, and their trade with your neighbors is always the cheapest. So Pakistan can provide them that connectivity, and they can provide that connectivity to Central Asian republics, and they need to understand that what is prosperity, what does prosperity mean actually. So prosperity means that their civilians, their people of Afghanistan, they live happily in their own country. They live with peace and stability and with money in their coffers. So that can only be achieved with peace and stability inside Afghanistan and having good relations with all their neighbors, and provide Afghanistan as a conduit between Pakistan and India, Pakistan and Central Asian republics, and that will actually, they will be the first beneficiary. Anything going through Afghanistan will actually be giving dividend to Afghan people and Afghan government.
And Shah, when do you think that realization is going to be there among the ranks of the Afghan Taliban? I mean, it's been over more than 3 years now that they have taken over. There was a very important point that was mentioned by Mr. Durrani. When it comes to governance, it's not, the tribalism is not going to work, if I got that correctly. So for governance, tribalism is not going to work. So when is that particular realization going to be instilled among the Afghanistan's Taliban's ranks?
I think they need little time for that, because they just got the positions without any training, any preparation. They don't have professionals in their lineup. So they really need some time to understand the situation, to know what to do. And I think Pakistan's diplomatic engagement with Afghanistan has one of these facets, that we need to make them understand what is the reality, what is the ground reality, what they are expected to do, what they are expected to understand. And I think continuous engagement with them make them learn what to do and what not to do.
But
so
they were so eager to take over power there in Afghanistan. As soon as they took over, they did not fulfill any of the promises. Rather, I mean, they went against those upholding the human rights also, the kind of ban they've imposed over there regarding the female strata of the society. They've had the promise that they won't allow the Afghan soil to be used against any other country. They didn't do that also. Formation of the inclusive government, that was also one of the key conditions in that Doha Peace Accord. So why were they so eager if they didn't have the capacity, or they did not know how to actually govern? And once they come into power, and how to take the things up from there?
Yeah. Power has that power, actually, it attracts. So everybody wants to grab it. But how do you utilize it? How do you execute it? that is another story. So they were ready to grab it because there was a vacuum. US left, NATO forces left, so they were the people who could grab it, and they did it. But they were not ready, they were not prepared, they are still not prepared. You see, today I think they have made a statement that we will ban all international organizations who have Afghan women working in them. Now, this is all against, international norms, international conditions, and their promises also. They need to be taught. They need to be educated, actually. And I think all neighbors, including Pakistan, need to remain engaged with them. But we should not let go our red line, and we should not let them go to do whatever they are not supposed to do against us. We need to make our red lines, our green lines clear to them, and we need to remain engaged with them, I think.
Right, Mr. Sherazi, do they need to be educated, the Afghan Taliban, who are so eager to take over power, and just for the sake of taking over, they became the rulers, the de facto rulers in Afghanistan, and they are still unable to govern because they don't know how to govern?
Well, Jawad, I think it's really a dilemma that why the international community, led by the US and all those powers who had been here in Afghanistan, and they ditched it for the third time, and now they installed a non-inclusive government and the people of Afghanistan against their will. We don't have a representation from all stakeholders. Still, an ethnic group, which Ambassador Durrani mentioned, that they were also like a kind of a force, a warlord force, which had been fighting on the on the basis of their Islamist jihad, what we can say against the Russians and then against the coalition troops. But why the civilized world imposed such a rule on Kabul, against which they had been fighting for years, and for that they had ousted the former Mullah Omar regime from this region. So I think the international community, as well as the people, they have their own interest. They are always using this region for their proxy wars in one way or the other. Now another proxy war is in the offing in the form of countering China, pushing India to counter China. So there are different aspects of that. Now coming again to your question that why they wanted to grab the power. This is the thing, they had been fighting for power. They wanted to rule. Actually, they had in the mindset, perhaps they wanted to establish an emirate, Islamic emirate in the region, and gradually extend it to the entire region. The ISK concept, another concept. Perhaps I think we must be more worried about our own security and interest, instead of what Afghanistan is doing, what Kabul or the Afghan Taliban are doing. But importantly, the message should be very clear from the Pakistani foreign policy experts, as well as by the Pakistani state, that how a peaceful neighbor is important for the socio-economic development of the region. This is very important because a destabilized Afghanistan is a serious threat not only to the Central Asian republics, to the Iranian interest, to Pakistan, but the entire region. And the proxies are the non-state actors which are operating. They are a threat to any country of the region. So we have to be very realistic. Even if this regime is unable to govern and rule, and rule according to the international standards and norms, I think it would be a source of problems for the future of this region.
Right, Mr. Sherazi, as you already mentioned, the situation seems to be very complex. A number of stakeholders trying to, have that leverage through Afghanistan. You've also mentioned of those proxies. In that particular situation, in your earlier take, you talked of that responsibility that we should be highlighting this particular thing again and again to sensitize the international community. They've got a role to play. They've got the responsibility in this particular regard as well. So out of the two streams, which one do you think suits Pakistan the best? Should Pakistan be looking forward to the United States of America? We have seen in the recent past there has been expression of support, unconditional support on the part of the Americans by looking at certain statements that came from the State Department spokesperson of their unconditional support for Pakistan as far as Pakistan's fight against terrorism and TTP is concerned? Or should Pakistan be following or looking forward towards more of regional countries or regional players in order to deal with this particular problem? Which out of the two do you think would serve Pakistan's interest best?
You know, like after the Trump administration, we have seen last time they have withdrawn that support which the United States had been extending to us in the war on terror. So I still doubt that the new Trump administration would be helping out Pakistan or extending their all-out support for Afghanistan. But yes, the counter-China policy and more focused on the Ukrainian crisis, perhaps the U.S. interest in the region would be just Chinese specific, and they would be trying to bank on those. Yes, Pakistan, the regional countries, I think Iran is very important, perhaps China is very important. The Central Asian republics are again and again pointing out, and Afghanistan can be engaged to these local stakeholders. That would be more important to have a regional and localized solution, conveying a very clear message that a volatile Afghanistan would be a serious security threat to the regional countries. Even it can be Iran.
Your point is well taken. You are for the regional approach, the localized approach. Mr. Durrani, what's your understanding? Which out of these two streams do you think that could give dividend or help Pakistan address the situation better?
I don't think that Americans are interested. Their priority is not Afghanistan, or for that reason, the entire region. It is now left to the regional countries to fend for themselves, and I think the regional approach would be much better an option. And already the regional countries are sustaining Afghanistan to the subsistence level, because otherwise already the country is facing 97% poverty, out of which 52% are actually dependent on international humanitarian assistance. And hadn't the regional countries been there, like Pakistan, Iran, China, Russia, and Central Asian states, then I think there could have been a much bigger chaos in Afghanistan, and people would have fled the country. And then the most favored destination, I'm afraid, would have been Pakistan. So luckily, so far, this trend is not very much there. Although we cater for almost 95% of Afghanistan's secondary and tertiary medical needs. Regional approach is, in any case, has become a necessity, and we just cannot ignore it. I don't consider it as, with the Afghanistan, the situation is so serious that it cannot be arrested. I think it can very much be done. These skirmishes along the border are not something new. If you go by the archives, I think this had been happening during Zahir Shah's time. It happened during Sardar Daoud's time, during the communist time. And even during the Mujahideen, when they were having civil war, we were facing the brunt. So you have to face this Afghan problem. Right now, we had, I think, misplaced enthusiasm about Taliban, that when they came, so we were quite enthusiastic. I think we have to curb our enthusiasm. We have to be realistic. We have to have a relationship with Afghanistan, which is based on sovereign equality, but we should also keep a respectable distance from the government in Afghanistan. Don't try to impose your friendship on Afghanistan, or don't try to patronize Afghanistan. Let them fend for themselves. If they need our assistance, they know our address. So this should be our approach, and I think things would be okay, yes.
Right. Admiral Shah, what's your understanding, keeping ourselves at a distance, at a certain distance?
I think what we have done is in line with the international community's aspirations that nobody wants Afghanistan to become harbinger or breeding ground of terrorism once again. So Pakistan has been taking measures and safeguards in that respect. And in that context, international community's political support or moral support should be with Pakistan. But involving international community directly into Pakistan-Afghanistan affairs, I think that is not recommended. We have relations with Afghanistan, and we should continuously engage them directly. And as Ambassador Durrani has said, it's not that big an issue, and it's not something unique that has happened in our history. It has happened before also, and we again came closer. So hopefully these issues will be resolved. Their sense will prevail in Afghan interim government. And I think they will be ready to arrest the situation as soon as possible.
So which out of the two streams do you
I think
prefer?
regional approach is obviously better than.
So don't you think there is any responsibility or any sort of a role that has to be played at this particular point in time by the US in particular? We've seen their expression of support, of unequivocal support towards Pakistan regarding terrorism.
As I've mentioned that what we have done is in line with international community's aspirations. That includes US also. US also doesn't want Afghanistan to become breeding ground of terrorism once again. So in that context, US and Pakistan, they are in line with each other. They are aligned.
So is there anything, do you think there could be something that could be done on the part of the US? Because when you specifically talk of those leftover NATO caliber weapons which are now continuously being used by these terrorists against Pakistan?
I think Pakistan should leverage its relations with the US and ask them to actually ask Afghan interim government to basically have their check on these weapons falling to the undesired elements, and that can be done by leveraging their economic support, financial support to Afghan interim government. This case, this thing can be taken up with US government. But I think by and large, we should directly remain engaged with Afghan interim
Taliban directly. So, Mr. Durrani, your closing comment as to, is there any sort of mechanism or does it call for any sort of accountability when international troops withdraw from a certain territory? What about the leftover weapons? If they leave it back there in that territory, what about that?
Those weapons are not that lethal. I think it is the Americans, they took away the lethal weapons with them much in advance. These are the rifles, sniper rifles with night vision devices and all that. But that is manageable. I am not worried about that. My main issue is within my own borders, we have to bring in rule of law, and that is very important. Yes.
Right, Mr. Sherazi, the availability of these NATO caliber weapons, how much do they have an impact as to the operation of these terrorists? The night vision goggles, the NATO caliber weapons, haven't these weapons actually increased the capacity of the terrorists perpetrating terrorism against Pakistan?
Well, actually, I would support, second Ambassador Durrani, that they might not be so much dangerous or they can cause huge destructions, but yes, it can help the guerrilla warfare, which the TTP and the Fitna al-Khawarij and other terrorist groups are doing. But actually, the unleft agenda of National Action Plan, and as we mentioned, we have to take care our own house. We have to, go against those sympathizers, those supporters of those terrorist elements which are on the other side of the border. Because if you are drawing support from within the country, this is
for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Mr. Asif Durrani, former ambassador, former Pakistan special representative of Afghanistan. Thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. Mr. Rear Admiral, retired Faisal Shah, senior analyst, joining us in the studio. Mr. Shah, thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.